Metaverse. What does this mean? I'm going to give you some clues and elements to first understand what it is and make your own opinion on whether it is useful, fun, or an absolute dystopy. This video is part of a longer series of videos on the topic, so don't hesitate to check the playlist. Well, first thing first, why are we talking about the metaverse? The reason is because at the end of the year 2021, Facebook decided to rename themselves Meta. And this created a storm in the media and in the tech industry because this topic of metaverse became at the forefront of what's trending in the new technology. Okay, but what is a metaverse? So the objective of this video is to give you some definitions about metaverse. I'm going to give you actually two definitions of metaverse. One that I personally think it's much more literal, and another one that is more coherent about how you will read in the press or hear in the media about this topic of metaverse. Okay, so let's go for my first definition of metaverse. For me, a metaverse is a permanent online world which is massively multiplayer. So it has this characteristic, which is it's digital, it's online, and it's open to a lot of players, so it's multiplayer. And also, the last very important characteristic for me of a metaverse is that it's permanent. And for me, this notion of permanent means that if you don't go to the metaverse, if you're not visiting the metaverse still exists. And this makes all the difference with the former way of playing a video game. When you enter a metaverse, you play in the metaverse, but if you are not in the metaverse is still going on. A very good example of that is World of Warcraft. And this characteristic that the game has this kind of permanence, it exists even if you are not going there, creates a lot of addiction. But it also creates a lot of interest for gamers. And so you have this component of something that is social because it's multiplayer, that is digital, and that is a world that exists whatever you do there or don't do. Okay, so this first definition was very literal. But I'm going to give you a definition which is kind of the extension that we see now in the press or everywhere. When we talk about metaverse, we very often talk about virtual reality and or augmented reality. Basically, we talk about technologies that create a feeling of presence and an immersivity that was never achieved before. So virtual reality is when you have a headset, for instance, and you are completely immersed in a virtual world. And thanks to virtual reality, this world is in 3D. So you can see your hands with some of the headset, and you can actually navigate in a world that is completely virtual. With augmented reality, and I would say mixed realities technology, it's a little bit different. So basically you have sometimes goggles, or it can also be a headset, but you will see the real world, physical world around you. And on this physical world, there will be some extra things that are actually virtual. Some of the most famous augmented reality experience actually are not even with glasses, they are on phone. And the most famous one, you probably already know about it, it's Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is an augmented reality experience because you walk in the physical world, and with your smartphone, you happen to see some Pokemons that you can only see on your smartphone, of course, but that are located in a physical space in the physical world. So that's what we call mixed reality. And some people, when they talk about metaverse, they talk about those immersive experiences that are virtual reality and augmented reality. An interesting fact why actually this concept of metaverse has become much more popular, it's because the VR technology evolved in a way that it has become much more accessible. So if you look at virtual reality technology, there were already a lot of experiments in the 90s and in the beginning of the 2000s. There were like arcade experiments, and there were some of the first VR headsets. There has been a turning point in this technology around 2010, 2014. And this turning point is mainly for me, the Kickstarter campaign of Oculus Rift. Because this Kickstarter was when this first device that would one day become much more accessible became a reality. And from this moment, from this turning point, so in 2012 you had the Kickstarter, but in 2014 what happened? Facebook acquired Oculus for $2 billion. So since this turning point in the industry, there were like hundreds of startups doing VR experience, headset, device, and even all the big tech companies in the world started to develop some prototypes and solutions. So you had, for instance, Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Sony, Samsung, you had the HTC device, on PlayStation, you had all sorts of new technologies to experiment, and there was a game changer in this industry that made VR actually become a reality for much more people. And this game changer again was Oculus. So Oculus in 2019, they released the Oculus Quest, which was a headset that you can basically wear without connecting it to a super powerful computer. And this was a game changer because it made it accessible to anyone, even if you didn't have a super powerful computer or a super powerful gaming console. And this has been clearly, for me, a big turning point for VR technology because since then, it has become much more accessible. And therefore, that's what I call from 2019 the consolidation phase of virtual reality technology. Right now, we are still in this consolidation phase, and Facebook has become a clear leader thanks to Oculus on the VR gaming space because of these devices that are much more accessible. And they released since then the Oculus Quest 2, and they are about to release at the end of 2022 Cambria, which will push the boundaries of this technology even further, because not only it will be VR, but you will also have some component of augmented reality. So even if you wear your headset, you will still be able to see around. And this will create even more immersive experience and potentially also more use case that will be able to be used in a lot of industries. One last thing about Metaverse is where does it come from actually? Where does this word come from? So Metaverse is a sci-fi concept. It comes from a science fiction novel called Snow Crash that was published in 1992. And in this novel, the hero says that he lives in a shithole. So basically he lives in a horrible place, he has a horrible life, but he goes into the Metaverse to have an amazing digital life. And that's Neil Stephenson, who wrote this novel, that invented this word of Metaverse. I personally think that the origin of this word, that the fact that it comes from science fiction is very interesting, because this concept of Metaverse raises a lot of philosophical questions. And whether or not it will be a good thing for humanity, the emergence of this technology, now what's for sure is that this technology has emerged. It's a reality in a lot of people's life, and there are already a lot of ways people are using the Metaverse daily. And I'm going to cover them in another video.